Welcome to this explainer. Let's jump right into it. Today, we're taking a close clinical look at the neurobiology of your child's brain. We've established before that their brains are essentially wired for a physical, high-stakes world that just doesn't exist anymore, an evolutionary mismatch. But I want to start by acknowledging your actual day-to-day reality in the world we live in right now. The endless grinding homework battles, those thick folders of notes sent home from school, the incredibly discouraging teacher conferences, where you're hearing the exact same phrases on repeat, disrupts the class, won't apply himself, or she just isn't living up to her potential. I know the silent guilt you carry, constantly wondering if you did something wrong. I am here to tell you right out of the gate that you didn't. Today, we're going to replace that exhaustion and that blame with clear medical understanding, and we're going to give you practical tools to actually help your child thrive. So, why is it that your child can focus on a video game for 6 straight hours, but literally cannot sit still for a 15-minute worksheet? It is the ultimate paradox, isn't it? It frustrates almost every single parent. You watch your child lock in on a screen, completely immovable, hyper-focused for 6 uninterrupted hours. Yet, the absolute second you put a single 15-minute math worksheet in front of them, it's like their body physically rejects the chair. They wiggle, they complain. They get completely derailed by a speck of dust on the wall. It is maddening, and because it's so maddening, it's incredibly easy to interpret this as defiance. It feels like they're choosing one to care. But today, we're going to rely on medical clarity over moral judgment to explain exactly why this happens and why it has absolutely nothing to do with your child's willpower or their respect for you. Okay, let's dive into this. Dr. Alan Walker's quote here perfectly captures this dynamic. He says, "Your child isn't a problem to be fixed. They're a hunter being raised in a classroom." Going back to that evolutionary mismatch, their brains are biologically demanding constant movement and high stimulation. Those traits were amazing for survival in the past, but they really clash with a modern, quiet classroom. Their neurowiring is perfectly intact. It's simply the wrong setting. With that foundation set, let's bring this right back into your modern living room. Think about the agonizing gap between a bright child's potential and what actually happens when it's time for schoolwork. In one context, you see sheer brilliance. You see them building incredibly complex structures for hours, noticing the tiny hidden details that adults walk right past, asking 1,000 brilliant probing questions. Then, in another context, you see a total breakdown. The inability to finish a single worksheet, forgetting the homework that was literally just in their hand a second ago. It looks like they could if they just would, right? It looks like a behavioral choice, but biology tells us otherwise. That chaotic energy you're seeing isn't bad behavior. It's a high-performance body reacting to an environment that strictly demands stillness. To really understand this biologically, we have to talk about dopamine. It's a vital neurotransmitter responsible for motivation, focus, and sensing rewards. When a child's baseline dopamine levels are chronically low, their brain frantically goes looking for it. We call this dopamine-seeking behavior. So your child isn't just trying to be difficult. Their brain is involuntarily seeking out high stimulation, like a fast-paced video game, just to reach a functional baseline so they can stay awake and engaged. So how do we fill that tank? Well, to produce that required dopamine, the ADHD brain relies heavily on 3 very specific fuels: interest, urgency, and novelty. In our modern environment, these are the exact triggers that cause the brain to release that much-needed neurotransmitter. Without these 3 specific fuels, your child's brain literally cannot produce the chemistry required to encode information. If a task isn't deeply interesting, if there's no immediate urgent consequence, or if it lacks novelty, the tank remains empty. The brain will not lock in. It physically cannot. Think about what school asks of a child. Sit still, stay quiet, and focus on one thing for hours at a time. That expectation comes from a different era. An ADHD brain is built for movement, novelty, and urgency, not for stillness on command. When a brain that is highly optimized for high-stakes stimulation is suddenly asked to perform in a low-stimulation environment, the result is profound friction. Understanding this neurological reality completely removes the moral judgment from their behavior. They aren't failing at standard routine. They just possess a totally different set of neurological strengths that happen to clash with standard settings. What's really interesting here is how this completely reframes the core misunderstanding of ADHD. We use the phrase attention deficit all the time, right? Like the capacity to pay attention is just broken or missing. Well, actually, scratch that. It isn't missing at all. Your child has an interest-based attention system. They are not simply refusing to pay attention to the teacher. Their brain biologically cannot regulate attention for uninteresting, non-urgent things. But when they find something that clicks, boom, that interest-based system activates, and they can outperform almost anyone in the room. A really helpful clinical analogy is to think of a tiger and a cubicle. You put a tiger in an office setting and it looks totally out of place, right? Dysfunctional, even broken. But you put that exact same animal in the jungle, and suddenly it thrives as an apex predator. The key takeaway for you is that your child's neurological strengths, their hyperfocus, their rapid sensory responses, their out-of-the-box lateral thinking, those don't magically disappear when they walk into a classroom. The environment is the barrier, not the child. The superpower is fully intact. They are just a tiger and a cubicle. Let me give you a highly practical example of what changing that environment looks like. We call this the tape measure effect. Dr. Walker himself struggled terribly with fractions in school. Staring at a static chalkboard, it made zero sense. But during his senior year, he worked this hands-on job cutting and installing glass, and he was using a tape measure all day long. Within a week, fractions completely clicked. It all made perfect sense, shifting from abstract stationary learning to physical, tactile hands-on tools instantly activated his natural learning pathways. This type of brain learns by doing, by touching, by experiencing the immediate reality of a problem. And this brings us to a critical pivot, your parenting toolkit. Look, if your child is wired this way, traditional discipline is basically guaranteed to fail. Why? Because traditional discipline assumes defiance. It assumes your child actively chose to disobey. And it completely ignores the biological dopamine deficit that's actually driving the behavior. Furthermore, making a kid stand in a corner or taking away a privilege, that produces absolutely zero dopamine. It doesn't fill the tank. You cannot punish a wiring problem into compliance. All standard punishment does for an ADHD brain is teach a brilliant, capable kid that they are somehow fundamentally bad. Let's move to how we can actually use this. Knowing the biology, we can build actionable, medically sound strategies for your home. Since their brain doesn't naturally provide internal motivation for mundane tasks, we have to build the on-ramps for their dopamine-starved brain. Step 1. Find the interest or the hands-on angle. If it's math, get out physical objects. Step 2. Build external structure. Use visual timers. Create clear compartmentalized schedules. And Step 3. Get the treatment right. Effective treatment gently and consistently lifts your child's dopamine floor, so they aren't relying on novelty or crisis just to focus. I really want to reassure you about your child's energy here. A lot of the time I know it feels like they are just too much. But what they actually have is what Dr. Ned Hallowell famously calls a Ferrari engine. It is a high-performance, incredibly capable brain. The problem is, it's been paired with bicycle brakes. A Ferrari engine needs the proper fuel, the right track, and incredibly skilled handling to run without crashing. Your job as a parent isn't to somehow downgrade the engine. It's to provide the external structure, the correct environment, and the right fuel so they can channel all that massive horsepower properly. When we talk about fuel for that engine, we really have to take a clinical look at medication. In a standard environment, an ADHD child's dopamine tank is chronically low, which is exactly why a simple 20-minute assignment turns into a massive 2-hour battle at the kitchen table. The child is quite literally running on fumes. Medication from a clinical standpoint fills that gap. It elevates their dopamine to a functional baseline. It provides the necessary chemical fuel so your child can function, focus, and encode information without constantly needing a major crisis, a threat, or extreme novelty just to stay engaged. And that brings us to the biggest fear I hear from parents. You absolutely love your child's sparkling personality, their humor, their wild creativity. And naturally, you are terrified that medical treatment is going to dull their shine. But proper treatment does the exact opposite. Medication doesn't change who your child is. It gives them access to who they are. It bridges the gap. It allows that bright, funny kid to come home, sit down, knock out their homework without tears, and still be the exact same brilliant kid laughing with you at dinner. It preserves their personality while finally granting them access to their own immense abilities. And medication is only one part of the picture. Dr. Walker also coaches parents on the non-medication strategies we've walked through, so you can build the right structure and environment at home. So the crucial point is this: we need to fundamentally redefine what success looks like. The ultimate goal here is not to artificially force a child to sit perfectly still at a desk for 7 hours a day. The true goal, your real job as a parent, is to raise a child who can navigate this modern world, who understands their own unique wiring, and who grows up with the unshakable belief that there is absolutely nothing wrong with them. Because there isn't. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a question to really ponder. You have a child with a brilliant, highly capable brain. You now understand the neurobiology behind their attention and the very real reality of their dopamine needs. I know the exhaustion you feel is real, but the battle against their biology is one you can absolutely stop fighting today. Knowing what you know now about their Ferrari engine and their deep need for hands-on, interest-based learning, how will you build a childhood that fits the unique, incredible brain your child actually has?